Princess Alicia arrives in the magnificent royal capital, gasping at how different and more impressive it is than her home in Bourbon. Her excitement is cut short as a stern woman scolds her for being undignified and reminds her she is a future queen, forcing Alicia to quickly apologize to Chancellor Richard. Alicia silently fumes, wondering how they can talk about disgrace after taking her family hostage. They arrive. Before her stands an intimidating, dark castle, and she realizes with dread that this is the home of the brutal Demon King. She clenches her fists, determined to see this through for her family's sake. The story flashes back to the former king confronting his brother Wilfred, reminding him of the debt owed for his promotion to general. Wilfred coldly dismisses this, saying the king only used him as a tool to boost the nation's prestige. The king looks utterly shocked by this sharp retort. He admits there was some truth to it but argues that Wilfred would be nothing without him, a point Wilfred quietly concedes. Wilfred thinks back, realizing that was likely the moment everything started to go wrong. He remembers raising his sword against the terrified king, seeing it as the point where fate went off track. As someone screams, asking if he's really going to kill his own half-brother, Wilfred calmly confirms that he is. The king pathetically begs for his life, crying and promising to give up the throne, but Wilfred remains unmoved, his sword held high. With a swift and brutal strike, he cuts his brother down. Stained with blood, Wilfred looks down and states that if the king didn't want this, he should have been a better ruler. An attendant named Cedric congratulates him as the new majesty and invites him to take his seat on the throne. Cedric gestures to the now blood-soaked throne, declaring that from this moment forward, Wilfred is the King of Windsor, a title he accepts with a heavy heart. He collapses onto the throne, muttering about the cruel twist of fate that led him here. A brief memory of playing with his brother as a child flashes through his mind. Now he sits alone, surrounded by his brother's blood, feeling that everything he held dear, family and comrades, is gone. It all slips through his fingers like blood as an attendant's voice startles him back to the present. Wilfred wakes from the dark dream, asking his aide Cedric what he wants. Cedric calmly informs him that Princess Alicia is about to arrive. Wilfred sighs, realizing it's already time. He stands and decides to go welcome his new bride. As they walk, they overhear people gossiping about how the new king stripped even the loyal Marquis of Sussex of his title and property. They whisper that no one who opposes him is spared, prompting Cedric to quietly plead with his majesty to be kind to the princess. Wilfred claims that's his intention, but Cedric reminds him that women's hearts are delicate and that Wilfred's usual bluntness always makes them cry. Cedric explains that since women avoid him now, he must be gentle and advises him to wrap his words in kindness instead of being sharp. He even demonstrates how to nod and show concern for a woman's feelings, no matter how insignificant they seem. Wilfred questions the sincerity of such an act, but Cedric insists he just do it. Cedric then makes the bold claim that in matters of love, sincerity is actually harmful because men and women see kindness differently. He clarifies that women aren't seeking sincere advice but simply want affirmation, warning that Wilfred's usual brand of honesty would make most women frown. Wilfred skeptically asks if they just want empty words of affirmation. Cedric confirms this with a confident yes, while Wilfred looks thoughtful. Wilfred then bluntly asks if that means women are genuine fools, making Cedric flinch at his harshness. Cedric tries to explain that while there are many intelligent women, love makes people foolish, and Wilfred muses that he's heard that before. Their conversation dissolves into a comical misunderstanding about the subtleties of romance. Cedric desperately begs Wilfred to be gentle with the princess, comparing her to fragile porcelain, and Wilfred simply agrees to do his best. Cedric reminds him their alliance with Baroa is their lifeline and that he's truly counting on him. Wilfred walks onward, internally acknowledging that he understands Cedric's concerns. His mind drifts to a childhood memory of being ostracized by friends who said he lacked something essential as a person. He remembers them walking away, leaving him alone, a feeling that has persisted since he was a child. He reflects that this very lack of a human heart makes him a calm and rational leader who can win wars, yet he still feels a void. But because of this void, he can only feel pity for his bride. He walks down a long, dark hall, questioning if someone like him can ever truly be with anyone. He wonders if he can build a real relationship or ever make her happy. He closes his eye in weary contemplation. He knows he cannot achieve happiness unless he can somehow fill the emptiness inside him. Standing before the grand entrance, this single thought feels terrifyingly certain. His footsteps echo as he steps outside to meet his fate. He stands at the top of the stairs, flanked by Cedric, looking down at the rows of guards and the approaching carriage. From the carriage, Princess Alicia looks up with a nervous expression. She asks her attendant if the imposing man before them is her husband-to-be, the King of Windsor. Her attendant introduces His Majesty Wilfred Ivan Windsor, whose intense glare makes Alicia yelp with fear. The scene jumps back 1 month to the Baroa Kingdom, where Alicia recalls her life as a simple commoner. The king suddenly summons her. He tells a stunned Alicia that she is going to Windsor. Confused, she asks what he means, and he reveals she is his true daughter by blood. He explains that her mother was a maid to the queen consort. The king continues his story, explaining that the queen discovered their affair and cast her mother out, and now that his legitimate daughters refuse to marry the demon king, he has summoned Alicia to go in their place. Alicia protests that she doesn't want to go either, but the king coldly tells her she has no right to refuse. He then threatens her, asking if she cares what happens to her beloved adopted family. Alicia gasps, a look of horror on her face as she thinks of them. Back in the present, she shivers, remembering that terrifying conversation. Peeking from the carriage curtain, she nervously wonders about this so-called demon king. Her first impression is that he looks like he would kill her for the smallest mistake. She thinks desperately that if she could just run away, she would do it right now. But she clenches her fists, remembering her promise at her mother's grave to protect her siblings and her resolve to survive so she can see them again, refusing to die for her biological father's sake. She takes a shaky breath to compose herself. A flash of a future moment shows her falling and being caught by Wilfred. Back in the present, Wilfred waits patiently as Alicia hesitates to exit the carriage. She tries to delay, telling her attendant she needs to prepare herself and that her potential shame would be Baroa's shame. Impatient, the attendant grabs her arm and pulls her forward, causing her to yelp. She stumbles out of the carriage, losing her footing entirely. She falls helplessly forward. Crap, she thinks, shutting her eyes tight and bracing for the hard ground. But the impact never comes, and she cautiously opens an eye. She's been caught mid-fall by King Wilfred himself. The moment hangs in the air. And then her flailing hand connects with his face in a solid punch, making him stagger back as Cedric stares in disbelief. Alicia freezes in utter panic, screaming in her mind, "What did I just do?" as Wilfred clutches his face in pain next to the carriage. Wilfred groans in pain while Alicia anxiously asks if he's all right. He sinks to one knee as she frantically apologizes, insisting she didn't mean to hit him. Alicia panics, convinced it's all over and her life is completely ruined. A dramatic portrait captures the tense and awkward start to their relationship. She mentally spirals, wishing she could just die, while Cedric and the guards watch the scene unfold. As guards and Cedric rush forward asking if he's hurt and needing a doctor, Cedric calmly holds up a hand telling everyone not to panic. Wilfred gets to his feet, dismissing the incident by saying he just tripped in the heat and then surprises Alicia by asking if she is hurt, leaving her completely stunned by his concern. But his gaze reminds her of the Grim Reaper from her past. The story flashes back to a time when Alicia was traveling in a carriage. She and her family hear a scream outside and she peeks out to see a mother and daughter in distress. A hulking bandit has cornered them, sneering that they look poor but he'll take them anyway. He declares that selling the two of them will bring in far more money than robbery. Alicia screams for help from the carriage window as the bandits drag the terrified pair away. One of the bandits cruelly points out the bodies of slain guards, telling her no help is coming for them. The bandit grabs her mother's hair and snarls that they both belong to him now. The mother and daughter cry out in pain and fear, begging him to stop. He roars at them to quit their bawling, and raises his hand to strike the little girl. A younger, helpless Alicia watches the horror unfold. He tells the wailing child he warned her to be quiet. Now it's time for punishment to make sure she's too scared to cry. Alicia screams for him to stop, feeling completely helpless as he prepares to beat the child until she stops crying. She can only watch with tears in her eyes. Suddenly, a young man with an eye patch appears among the fallen bodies, having been drawn by the noise. He coldly assesses the situation, recognizing them as bandits. The furious bandits threaten to kill the young brat for what he did to their buddy. He moves with blinding speed, a blur of motion with his sword. In an instant, one bandit falls, completely caught off guard. He effortlessly dispatches the others in a flurry of sword strikes. He strikes down another bandit with brutal efficiency as the last one runs for his life. The remaining bandit stares in disbelief, wondering what kind of kid he's dealing with. He's terrified by the boy's complete lack of emotion, killing as if it were just a chore. The bandit desperately grabs the little girl as a shield, demanding the boy drop his sword, but Wilfred just calls him stupid. He coldly asks why he would ever discard his weapon for a complete stranger. As the bandit pleads, Wilfred points his sword at him and simply says, "You defied me." As the boy becomes a grim reaper silhouette ready to strike, telling the bandit to find his regret in hell, Alicia is pulled back to the present by Wilfred asking what's wrong. She snaps back to reality, startled as he asks if she's alright. She quickly insists she's totally fine, fit as a fiddle, and not hurt at all. Her attendant rushes over to apologize for her behavior, though Alicia knows it was his fault for pushing her. Wilfred gracefully dismisses it as a minor accident and tells him not to worry, and the attendant expresses his gratitude. He then turns to Alicia, saying he'd like to continue with the ceremony. Wilfred internally sighs, thinking that if this is how things are starting, they're in for a very rough ride. He looks at the flustered girl and thinks she's truly pathetic, forced to live among commoners because of royal politics. He then bluntly asks if she is afraid of him, causing her to jump in surprise. Her mind races, desperately trying to find the right words to say. It hits her with certainty that he is the Grim Reaper from that night. Forcing a smile, she thinks that saying the wrong thing now could genuinely get her killed. A memory flashes in her mind. Her mother's voice tells her not to let feelings make her decisions. She remembers her mother comforting her after the bandit attack. Her mother gently pats her head, explaining that there are two types of scary people, including the truly kind ones. She continues that there are also devils with sweet smiles, but truly kind people often have unexpectedly stern faces. She advises her to learn the difference between them, like her kind stepfather or the black-winged boy who saved them, in order to find happiness. "So don't be afraid," her mother had said. "Look at the person clearly." The memory strengthens her resolve. She meets his gaze directly. As Wilfred starts to apologize for losing his composure, thinking he's intimidating her again, Alicia speaks up, saying it seems like she's the one who intimidates people without meaning to. She nervously clasps her hands. Wilfred is taken aback, admitting people are usually afraid of him and telling her not to worry about her reactions since she must have heard stories about him. She looks at him with newfound clarity, and he looks back, intrigued. She wonders to herself what she's even doing, seriously. He hasn't done anything wrong, he even helped her when she fell, so she questions the strange effect he's having on her. And yet she's still panicking. Wilfred thinks that while he'd return her to her family if he could, the fate of the entire nation rests on this marriage. He concludes that her not appearing in public is convenient as long as the political bond is secured, and he turns to Cedric. He announces that since the princess isn't well, they'll call off the ceremony, but Alicia interrupts, begging him to wait. He turns back, surprised, and asks her what's wrong. He looks at her with a hint of surprise. Alicia grits her teeth, telling herself her mom always said girls need guts. She remembers that even that Grim Reaper didn't just save her. She repeats to herself over and over, "I'm not scared." Now is the time to stand firm. Channeling all the scrappy spirit she learned from her life on the road, she declares that she is fine now. She stands tall before him, bathed in sunlight. She boldly declares for all to hear, "Let's continue the ceremony." Wilfred is completely taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor. A quiet moment passes between them and their attendants. They proceed inside and walk down the grand staircase together for the ceremony. She walks beside him with a newfound confidence, a small smile playing on her lips. As they stand at the altar, Wilfred reflects that no woman has ever looked at him that way before. He muses that women are either terrified of him or try to flatter him for his power, it's always one or the other. Her strange mix of fear and boldness caught him completely off guard, and it felt new and, looking at her, he finds himself thinking that she is beautiful. And so, they are married. Night falls at the castle. Alicia walks hesitantly toward the bedroom, realizing she somehow survived the ceremony. But then she sees the giant bed and her panic returns. She stands stiffly, realizing with dread what comes next in a political marriage. An awkward silence hangs between them. Her eyes widen in terror as the reality of the wedding night truly sinks in. Peeking from behind the bed curtains, Alicia thinks that this feels heavenly, but she's not mentally prepared. She clutches her arms nervously, thinking she doesn't even have a boyfriend, let alone this. She looks at her new husband waiting by the bed, her mind screaming about what the wedding night implies. Suddenly, he calls her name, making her yelp and jump back in surprise. He enters the room wearing a dark robe, telling her not to be so frightened because he doesn't intend to do anything. He gives her that same strange, faint smile from before, and she watches him, unsure what to think. Gathering her courage, she timidly asks if he's sure he doesn't intend to do anything, because she's His Highness's wife now. She flashes back to a maid telling her that tomorrow they will inspect the bedsheets for blood to confirm her chastity, which will verify that any child she has will carry the royal bloodline. Alicia remembers her shock and horror at hearing this, while the maid calmly explained it was a standard custom among the aristocracy who value lineage. Back in the present, she tells Wilfred that while it's scary, she'll do her best for the sake of the alliance. She's willing to endure it, because it's something that has to be done, but he tells her he never had any such intention in the first place. She just stares at him, confused. She asks if he's holding back because she was too afraid, but he says that has nothing to do with it. She then wonders if it's because she's not his type, comparing her plainness to the vibrant and beautiful women at the ceremony. He tells her not necessarily, admitting he wouldn't call her a great beauty but would say she's reasonably pretty, which she finds to be a rather backhanded compliment. He then says there's something he needs to tell her first. She's on edge as she asks what it is. He looks at her seriously and says he has no intention of having children with her, and apologizes for being a poor husband. He bows his head and explains that he should have told her before they were married, because now it's practically a breach of contract, but she cuts him off, telling him to raise his head. She quickly reassures him that she understands the marriage had to happen for the sake of their nation's alliance, so she accepts his terms completely and tells him again to please raise his head. He seems surprised, noting she hasn't even heard his reasons, but she just brushes it off, saying she forgives him anyway and doesn't need to hear it. She insists that seeing a king bow to her is too much for her commoner's heart to bear, and he observes that she has a very generous heart. But then, a thought strikes her, and she asks him why a king wouldn't want children. He scoffs at the very idea. He turns away with a look of disgust. He tells her frankly that anyone who would want to make their child a king has lost their mind. No one in their right mind would want their child to live a life like his. He then recounts his past, explaining that 9 years ago he was sent to the front lines during a war with their neighbor Amal, simply a sacrificial symbol to boost morale because he carried royal blood, and though they eventually won, many lives were lost. This cursed blood, he says, only dragged him into yet another storm of chaos. He remembers Cedric begging him to take the throne, insisting he was the only one who could save the kingdom from ruin. And so, he ended up having to kill his own half-brother. In the end, his royal blood brought him nothing but pointless battles and an empty throne. He would never, even in his wildest dreams, want to pass on that cursed fate to a child of his own. Alicia remarks that people who wouldn't want to make their kids kings are a dime a dozen. But to do it, they would have to kill their own family, and she can't even imagine that. She thinks about the rumors she's heard about him, that he was targeted by his own family and ended up killing his half-brother for the throne. She clenches her fists, realizing that she would never do that, not in a million years. She looks at him and says she understands now why he won't have children. He just confirms that she's right. She decides to sincerely try to make up for her earlier behavior, hoping he'll accept her apology, and he says that he truly feels sorry for her, knowing this won't be easy. He sits with his head bowed, and she stands by the door, a quiet understanding passing between them. She tells him she honestly doesn't mind his decision at all. Relieved, he asks about who will be the next king then, and she tells him she has a younger brother. He stands up and turns to the window, saying her brother is a bit unreliable, but with someone like Cedric supporting him, it should all work out. Alicia watches him, realizing something about this man. He ascended to the throne, but he feels no attachment to it at all. She realizes that she's heard he usurped the throne and became feared after a series of purges. And so she asks him why he accepted being king, even though he clearly hates it. He just looks out the window, a drink in his hand. She puts her hands up and says of course he didn't want the crown, that's fine, but this country was already rotten. She continues that it was shackled by 1,000 years of tradition, so no one could take bold action while corruption ran rampant. He says she's right, the last 2 rulers did nothing but indulge themselves and drag the nation downhill. He explains that he realized people were placing their hopes in him for a change, but there was no one else who could do it, and that's all there is to it. She realizes now that he never chose this out of his own desire. He's willing to be hated by the public if it brings happiness to the people living here. He's only doing it because he has to, bearing it as an inevitable burden. He carries the ruthless resolve to discard the lesser for the greater good. But she knows that's not all there is to him. The real him is surely something more. and she gives him a soft, understanding smile. She walks over to him. They stand close, a silent moment passing between them. She looks up at him and says, "Your Majesty?" She reaches out her hands and asks him if, contrary to the rumors, he's actually a really gentle person.